Hello and welcome back. The premise at FM23 Roleplay is that we take a 15-year-old American kid, give him a 200 potential rating through the external player editor, and we follow him throughout his career. We will not coach any club and we will not interfere by using the in-game editor. Now, we created this 15-year-old kid, but our test subject, Henry Marshall, is now 17 years old. And he was shocked to be traded to Atlanta United for $845,000 in allocation money and 2 draft picks by his old club, St. Louis City. Now, Henry Marshall, to say the least, was unhappy about this turn of events. Let's see if we even can find it down here. We might be able to find it. We might not. Nope. I've already gone, as you can see up here, to January 27th, 2014. So his agent, Hunter Alvarez, had counseled him that, you need to come to terms with this trade to Atlanta United because Atlanta United has got a lot more money than St. Louis City has. And they can certainly give you a lot more money than St. Louis City ever could when it comes to renegotiate your contract at the end of 2014. We can see here, just on the short list, that Henry Marshall is making $85,500 a year, but this will end in December of the 2014 year. Well, Henry and his family had to start planning right away. After Christmas was over in Shreveport, he needed to go back to St. Louis. He needed to pick up his possessions. He needed to say goodbye to the Winds. There was still some question out there, during December and January before he shows up in Atlanta as to whether he'd even spend a single moment in an Atlanta kit. I mean, the LA Galaxy, LAFC, Toronto, all at one time or another were hoping to swing a trade with Atlanta to get Henry Marshall. And Atlanta had been very active in the trade market during the offseason. They acquired 37-year-old keeper Stefan Fry. They traded away midfielder Santiago Sosa to Seattle. They acquired midfielder Matias Rossetto from Inter Miami. I mean, there was nothing to keep Atlanta from just passing him on to some other higher bidder. Well, his host family in St. Louis, the Winds, they were sorry to see him go. Victoria Wynn had hoped this year she'd get a chance to teach him something about, doing laundry, making his own meals, getting him ready for that transformation from adolescence to adulthood. But now Henry was going to have to learn all those things on his own. And as for his best friend, Jonathan Wynn, well, it wasn't going to be the same. They wouldn't be around each other anymore. They wouldn't be talking to each other a whole lot. Each of them promised to keep in touch with each other by text message. Henry thanked, it was a very sad moment. Henry thanked the family for everything they'd done for him because they really were his second family in St. Louis. So once he got all his crap, he drove back to Shreveport, stayed with his family until New Year's Day in Shreveport, and then started the drive to Atlanta over a 2-day trip starting the morning of January 1st, 2024. And he was 1 week away from training camp, and he had to begin making arrangements for lodging and transferring his driver's license. Now, the club was willing to work with Henry regarding his lodging. They knew he was 17 years old, so it wasn't a regular situation where he had to work with an adult. And as a 17-year-old, it was going to be unlikely that any apartment owners would ever sign a lease with Henry because Henry couldn't be held liable if he refused to pay or if he damaged the premises. That's the danger of signing a lease with a minor. A minor isn't legally liable. Therefore, the club told him they would co-sign a lease on his behalf until he turned 18. And they showed him a couple of furnished apartments. He chose a furnished apartment in the Sandy Springs neighborhood, which is just north of Atlanta. Sandy Springs, it had the advantage of being the same distance away from Marietta, where Atlanta United's training facility was located, and the same distance, pretty roughly, from Mercedes-Benz Stadium in downtown. Other players lived in the same area, the Sandy Springs area, although they lived in houses and not apartments. And Henry made a note that he'd get a better place to live in once he had the money and the time to look for one. Now, unlike the trip from Virginia to St. Louis, transferring his restricted license from Missouri to Georgia, that was easy. He just simply moved from the Missouri restricted driver's rules to the Georgia restricted uh, driver's rules. And when he was 18, all the restrictions would go away, and then he'd have a full license. So his first job at the club was to meet Wilfred Nancy. He was the new manager at Atlanta United. He had previously been with Montreal and Columbus. The Henry's managers through his short career had been, respectively, an Englishman, an American, a South African, and now a Frenchman. Nancy spoke English well, but he spoke with a strong French accent. During this initial meeting, Nancy really wanted most to explain his philosophy of football to Henry, which was the idea of holding the ball in small spaces of the pitch and forcing the opponent to move forward to retake it so much that the opponent was out of position, and then you rapidly moved the ball to the other side of the pitch and you broke away. And he also talked to Henry about the need at Atlanta United for empathy. It's not blaming people, or worse, or even worse than that, not dogpiling your teammates after they screwed up. You know, Nancy said, "We are all brothers on this team," and he was very serious about it. He emphasized the 3 C's: communication, control, and then chaos. Now, he was frank with Henry. He said, "You have a chance to start, but I don't really know yet. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm sure you can start. I just want to see what everybody brings to the table here. I'll know in 2 months who I want. If you didn't have talent, the club wouldn't have made such a massive effort to get you here. We know you can adjust because you've already proved you can adjust to, before. I mean, the fans here in Atlanta are demanding. This is just what comes to the big club. Big club, big size, big everything. And you won't have to come in to talk to me if there's a problem because I will be coming to you first. You're going to see that we have a lot of opportunities to talk to each other in the future." And he asked Henry a lot about his family. How was Henry settling in? Were there any issues where he was living? Why did he think of Atlanta? Why did he think of St. Louis? Why did he think of DC United? He told Henry that he needed to be sociable. He said, "Henry, you can go a long way in this life just by saying hello to somebody. Acknowledge your teammates. Don't be lost in your own little world over here. You're the youngest man on the squad, but a day will come when you are not the youngest man on your squad. And you can make sure that people feel like teammates and not strangers." But at this moment in time, Atlanta United weren't exactly feeling like teammates. They had finished 8th in the Eastern Conference the previous year, just missing the playoffs, and there was not a lot of loyalty on the club, or unity for that matter. Left wing Alvaro Barreal desperately wanted to be loaned out to some other club, and Atlanta United had turned down half a dozen offers from other clubs. The club was starting to split into pro-Barreal and anti-Barreal sides. And Henry, just shortly after he got there, was actually asked by one of his teammates what he thought of this Barreal situation. Well, he didn't know anything about it. He didn't know how to answer that question. So then his teammate presented him with this imaginary, well, if this were what a club were doing to you, and they did this, and if they did that, well, if you wanted to leave, what would you do? But before his interrogator could wrap up this presentation, another teammate chimed in for everybody to shut the hell up, because somebody from the pro-Barreal side, was coming into the room. Now, Henry could definitely tell that there were cliques at Atlanta United. Having the club accept an $11 million loan offer for Eskiel Barco from Hertha, that didn't help things, followed by Atlanta United accepting loan offers for 3 other of its players, because then the attitude was, well, if you're going to accept loan offers for everybody, why don't you just let Barreal go off and do what he wants to do? It wouldn't be until late January 2024 before Atlanta United solved this problem. They let Barreal go off to the LA Galaxy in exchange for the number 1 picks in the 2026 and 2027 Super Drafts and 1 international player spot. Atlanta United had at least partially diffused all of this potential disunity in the club just before the season started. So let's break away here for some world news. At the end of the year, all at the end of 2023, they gave out all the major awards. Bernardo Silva of Man City, he was FIFA's best player. Kylian Mbappe of PSG was World Player of the Year. Gianluigi Donnarumma of PSG was best goalkeeper. Leon Bailey of Aston Villa was the CONCACAF Player of the Year. And the CONCACAF goalkeeper was Luis Malacon from America. And the U.S. Young Player of the Year was Johnny out of America. In the MLS news, Jason Bent, he took over as manager of Toronto. He left Nashville. And Gonzalo Pineda took over at Nashville. The Super Draft was held. Inter Miami got an A+ grade in the Super Draft by the Washington Post with it. Atlanta United got a B+ grade. Edwin Mosquera, a 23-year-old midfielder for Atlanta United, twisted his ankle. He'll be out for 3 or 4 weeks. As I said before, Eskiel Barco accepted that offer from Hertha. Arsenal's Folarin Balogun, I don't know if that's how it's pronounced, he accepted a loan deal to Atlanta United. And striker Wilfried Kanga signed a deal with Atlanta United for $1.75 million a year. This would make him the second highest paid player. That's Luis Araujo. Once again, don't know if that's pronounced right. He is the captain of the team. He makes $3.94 million a year. Lots of guys getting paid very well. And then there's Henry Marshall down here, still on that senior minimum salary contract at $85.5 a year. And I stopped at January 27th because now we're getting into the friendly stage of Atlanta's schedule. We'll have some friendlies here at the beginning. Dallas, Chicago, the two-team Portland Sporting KC, and we get the Champions League second round first leg here, which has Atlanta United facing Isidro Metapan. Isidro Metapan apparently is an El Salvadoran team that plays. So we'll see how those games turn out. And I'm going to go ahead and move forward in the calendar right now. Okay, we are back. And as you might have seen, and we're going to give you some reviews here. Oh, incidentally, before the preseason game against FC Dallas, Dallas goalkeeper Martin Pace, that's another name I'm not pronouncing correctly, was traded to Atlanta United for $1.5 million and a couple of super draft first round picks. So let's take a look at this game here. The 3-1 victory against visiting FC Dallas in the very first game. Now, there were no problems in that game. Atlanta won 3-1 at home. Henry Marshall was told by Wilfried Nancy that he'd be moved to the back four. That was the plan for the whole season. And Marshall was glad to be there. I mean, he had a 7.4 rating in the warm-up. And Pace, the new acquisition, had his first appearance in goal, even though, as you can see, it was only a 6.1. Marshall plays the entire 90-plus minutes that game. And then we go to a second friendly against Chicago, and it's another victory. This is a 2-1 win over the Men in Red. Marshall had an assist in that game. Not so great a finish last time. This time it was a 6.6. But he had the assist, and he also played that game for a full 90 minutes as well. After that game, Atlanta picked up central midfielder Jackson Uel. There's another name I can't pronounce. I'll learn these names sooner or later. In a trade with Seattle. And after this, the next match was going to be an intra-city match at Fifth Third Park against the Atlanta United 2 club in the United Soccer League. That one ended 1-1. They were denied by a late goal. Left winger Mohamed Salah, he equalized. Let's see if we have a picture of him. We do. He's a gym guy. Uh, he picked up a goal in the 82nd minute there. Henry Marshall did not play in this game. If you look at the results, they did not use him. He spent the entire game as an unused substitute. Game that followed that one. They went to Portland, first time seriously on the road. A friendly game, but Portland beat them 1-0. Atlanta United surprisingly lackluster during that game, struggling to seize possession, getting shut out. They only had 26%. They completed their passes, but they just could not hang on to possession. So all of Wilfried Nancy's, creating small spaces and keeping the ball in those small six spaces, you can't do that if you never have the ball. And Atlanta never had the ball. Marshall, he had the 6-7 result in that game. And Nancy has told Henry Marshall that he's tracking how his skill level changes during the game, which is why he's putting him in there for the full 90 minutes. Now, when it comes on later in the season, when they begin to start doling out the team numbers, Henry Marshall has been given hit at number 3 for the club. And Henry takes that as a good sign. He takes it, the lower your number, the more likely it is that you're doing well on the team. How unfortunately, the drama at Atlanta United never seems to stop. Ball playing defender Luis Abraham, he wants a better contract. And he threatens to head off to Nice if he can't get it, because Nice wants him. And this just becomes a February replay of the Alvaro Barreal situation I mentioned earlier in January. I mean, Henry notices the sides, when the club splits on the sides over this, they're just the same sides that happened when Barreal won out. It's as if they just basically swapped Barreal's name for Abram. Now, Nancy has said to the Atlanta press he's going to try to get Abram a better decent contract. And then left bank John Tolkien, he jumps in. He'll end up trying to demand a better deal for himself, too. And right now, the players are just kind of lining up at Nancy's door saying, give me a better contract, give me what I want, or, I'll just walk out. So the new manager not having really, any fun there. First game in the Champions League round against Isidro Metapan, and they win that one 3-0. No trouble. They take possession. They play the game they want to play. Marshall has a 7-1 in that game. It's a good game for him. He played the entire game in that game. Folarin Balogun, I'll have to remember that name and how to pronounce it. He's the loan from Arsenal. He had both a goal. He had an assist in his debut for Atlanta United. So there he is, right up there, right out in front. And John Tolkien, he's when New York says we'll take him. They're going to trade Nicolas Acevedo for him, and Atlanta says no way. We are not trading him. Atlanta is standing firm on players trying to walk out of the club just because they can stir up some negative press. However, in the next game against Sporting KC, find it here. Do we have a next game against Sporting KC? I could have sworn we did. There it is. And they were powerless to resist. Sporting KC just dominated that game. Atlanta's time of 26%. They just can't keep the ball. Kennedy, a disastrous game. Justin Garces, also a disastrous game. And no back, and that pretty much doomed them. Marshall, he didn't have a great game either. Nobody was really good. Abram was the best average there. Pulido, Alan Pulido of Sporting KC, he almost had a hat trick in that game, aside from the the penalty shot that he didn't get through in the 17th minute, and only Georgios Giakoumakis kept Atlanta from being swept in that friendly. And with that, we go to the second round, the second leg of the second round of CONCACAF Champions League. This is the other game against Isidro Matapan that was played in El Salvador. And Atlanta United will advance 2-1, 5-2 aggregate. Luis Arroyo, he gets Atlanta off to start. He scores. Folarin Balogun, he scores. They dominate the team from El Salvador. Marco, not a great game for him. Uriel, not a great game for him. But even then, Luis Abraham, he has the goal. It doesn't seem to improve his position. Still very unhappy at Atlanta United. And that takes us all the way to the regular season. Let's get you up here. There we go. Games against DC United, Columbus, Inter Miami, all that gets started. The quarterfinal in the CONCACAF Champions League is going to be against Olympia, a Honduran club. Let's see if we can actually see how that bracket looks. So a couple of these games, this game isn't completely played out yet. We have America and New York City, and we have Toluca and Cruz Azul, and there's a possibility that we could have a few more American teams in CONCACAF Champions League. All right. All right, I've got us up to March the 4th, 2024. This is a couple of days before Atlanta opens the season against DC United. A few things here. As you can see, Wilfried Nancy claims to have the John Tolkien situation, under control. So Nancy's busy putting out fires. LA Football Club put Franco Fragapane, who is an Argentinian. They put him on waivers a couple of days previously. Atlanta United picks him up off waivers. San Jose were also interested. So anyway, Atlanta United, they own Fragapane. He is an attacking midfielder. We'll see how he does. Well, anyway, I think we said enough. That's the end of this episode. Anyway, if you like what you hear or see, make a comment or hit the like and or subscribe button. So, until next time.